In this mini plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honorable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the visual mini plenary is deemed to be in the presence of Parliament and constitute a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition, the rules of visual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the visual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise, which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist by alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the visual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order and interjections. We shall now proceed to the order, which is debate on vote number 30, Communication and Technologies Appropriation Bill. I now recognize the Honorable Minister. Over to you, Minister.
Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Deputy Minister of Communications and Digital Technology, Mr. Phili Mapulane, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Communications, and Mr. Boise Maneli, Honorable Member, and members of the Portfolio Committee, Honorable Members of Parliament, the Acting Director General of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, Deputy Director Generals and other officials of the department, leadership and management of the state-owned entities within the portfolio of communications and digital technologies, and leadership of the ICT sector in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. This 2022-23 budget vote takes place a day after the World Telecommunication and Information Society Day. The World Telecommunication Day has been celebrated annually every 17th May since 1969 to mark the founding of the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, and the signing of the first International Telegraph Convention in 1865. The main objective of the day was to raise global awareness of social changes brought about by the internet and new technologies and the reduction of the digital divide. In addition, Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development acknowledges that the spread of information and communication technology and global interconnectivity has great potential to accelerate human development and bring the digital divide to an end. And as a country, we aspire to have all South Africans to be connected through cost-effective solutions that are also enablers of other sectors and business growth. We live in an era that demands that we create efficient and reliable telecommunications capacity to enable human-to-human, human-to-machine, and machine-to-machine communications capacity. This budget vote outlines the work the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies and its entities will undertake to bridge the digital divide and build an inclusive digital economy. The total budget of the department, which is vote 30, is 2.7 billion rands, or 2,717,182,000. That budget, 11% of that budget is compensation of employees, or the amount of 302 million rands, and goods and services, which is 440 million rands, which is 16% of that. And then 72% of that budget is transfers and subsidies. In terms of transfers to entities, ICASA receives a transfer of just over 760 million rands, the Films and Publication Board over 102 million rands, the National Electronics Media Institute of South Africa 102 million rands, Universal Service and Access Agency of South Africa USASA 86 million rands, and the Universal Service and Access Fund 66 million rands, and the SABC For the Channel Africa, they received 66 million rands. The public broadcaster receives 133 million rands, and the SABC program productions 15 million rands. The South African Post Office will receive 519 million rands. And there is no provision for Centec for both the migration of digital signals and dual elimination costs relating to the entire digital migration program. In terms of the goods and services budget for the infrastructure projects SA Connect, we have allocated 239.8 million rands. For the digital broadcast migration that we are completing, we have allocated 88.7 million rands. The remainder of the goods and services budget becomes 111 million rands. The phase 2 of the SA Connect will be funded through the infrastructure fund for the first year of this year, and the allocations of the next outer years will be provided from the National Fiscus to the National Treasury. In terms of the broadcast digital migration, the budget does not make transfer provisions to Centec for the migration of digital signals and dual elimination costs relating to the digital migration, because we have achieved 100% digital network coverage and satisfied all broadcast digital migration policy conditions and regulatory requirements that warrant the end of the dual elimination period. The broadcast digital migration, which is BDM, process is a critical digital transformation step that defines the ICT path for South Africa. We are happy to update honorable members that we are working towards concluding the analog switch off by the 30th of June 2022, and this is after the Gauteng High Court ruled in support of the conclusion of the program, but extended the time for the minister to complete the installation of set-top boxes for qualifying households who applied for government support by 31st October 2021. In addition to the 100% digital network coverage in South Africa, the BDM program has also achieved the following critical milestones. One, we've switched off 100% or 84% of analog sites of Mnet, and 52% or 163 sites out of the 314 sites of the SABC, and 9% or 8 sites of ETV out of the 93 sites of ETV. We have concluded analog switch off in 5 provinces, being Free State, Northern Cape, Northwest, Mpumalanga, and Limpopo. In the 5 provinces where analog has been switched off, we have concluded rearranging spectrum or risk-taking, thereby giving way for the spectrum to be assigned for future technologies and by ICASA to the mobile operators from the 1st of July 2022, in line with the outcomes of the recent spectrum auction. 4 set-top boxes installations are currently underway in all 9 provinces. We aim to complete by end of May installations of set-top boxes in additional 3 provinces for the 507,251 targeted households for the end of June having been installed, as we have already completed installations of set-top boxes in the provinces of Gauteng and Northern Cape. We have also commenced with the installations of set-top boxes that were targeted to be completed by end of September in Gauteng, and we are planning to complete the installations of the September 2022 targeted 260,000 set-top boxes way before the end of September. To complement the work of my colleague, the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition, on the directives to prohibit the importation and distribution of analog TV sets in South Africa, we will gazette a framework for IDTVs or digital television sets and set-top boxes to qualify to carry the Go Digital logo in a quest to protect South Africans to identify correct digital televisions in the retail market. The analog switch-off program is supporting more than 987 installer companies and has created more than 14,800 jobs for locals, predominantly young installers. On the spectrum auction, the completion of analog switch-off by 30 June 2022 is of national importance because of communications regulator ICASA has successfully completed the auction of the high demand spectrum and committed to the licensees that they will have access to relevant spectrum from the 1st of July 2022. ICASA concluded the high frequency communication spectrum auction in March 2022 as per the target set by President Ramaphosa in his 2022 State of the Nation address. I congratulate ICASA on reaching this significant milestone in our country. The 1st of July 2022 date for the availability of high demand spectrum to the licensees is also important for the National Treasury or the National Fiscus to have access to the much needed 14.4 billion that was raised during the spectrum auction. The release of the high-demand spectrum will improve the ability of mobile telecommunications operators to build robust telecommunications with better penetration and reach as we chase our goal of ensuring that all South Africans have access to the internet by 2024. To this end, the mobile telecommunications operators are starting to upgrade their telecommunication networks and to build robust 5G telecommunication networks. In the immediate, through ICASA, we have installed social obligations that will see the telecommunications operators connecting 18,520 schools, 5,731 clinics and hospitals, 8,241 traditional authority offices, 949 libraries, and Tusong service centers over the next 36 months. The department, working with ICASA, will monitor the progress on the connection of the site. Furthermore, the availability of spectrum must also result in the reduction of the cost of communication. We will progressively work on policy instruments to drive the reduction of cost to communicate in South Africa, including the classification of data as a new basic utility at the same level as water and electricity. The importance of data is because it has become the enabler of innovation and wealth creation for any country. In this regard, we will publish for public comment a revised spectrum policy no later than July 2022. The draft policy will include proposals for spectrum for SMMEs and network and data services in a manner that drives meaningful SMME participation in the telecommunications sector, amongst others. In the meantime, ICASA is undertaking a market study on the call termination review. The outcome of this market study will have a determining factor in the reduction of the average data prices. On South African Connect or SA Connect, to reach the end goal of truly digital South Africa with full digital inclusion of all its people, emphasis must be placed on the digital government, digital economy, digital industry, and data sovereignty. The most fundamental requirement for digital South Africa is access to connectivity or broadband networks by all, irrespective of geographic location and economic standing. To ensure access to broadband connectivity by all, Cabinet approved revised model and implementation plan for the SA Connect Phase 2 program that will ensure South Africa achieves a goal of universal access to internet by 2024. In terms of the revised SA Connect model, Centec and Broadband Infraco, or BBI, working with the SMMEs that are in the access network service providers, internet service providers, and mobile virtual network operators, will roll out 33,539 community Wi-Fi hotspots to cater for over 5,830,208 households over a 3-year period. The partnership with SMMEs in the telecommunications center is part of government's commitment to ensure the transformation of the telecommunication industry by supporting emerging telecommunications players. The SA Connect drive will expand from the core network owned by BBI and other state-owned entities and telecommunications infrastructure operators, as well as the satellite services of Centec, in line with our open access network policy. The SA Connect project is estimated to provide opportunities to approximately 120 SMMEs for core network build and create employment opportunities for more than 3,700 people, both skilled professionals and semi-skilled labor force. The implementation has commenced in the Eastern Cape and Northern Cape with work to connect 412 sites in both provinces. The National Treasury is in the process of finalizing mechanisms for availing additional funds to roll out to other provinces in the 2022-23 financial year, as provisions have already been made for the outer years. Similarly, CETA, in line with its legislated mandate, will provide and maintain connectivity to over 15,691 government sites over the next 3 years, with 4,706 targeted for the current financial year. The funding for connecting government sites is provided for in the ICT budgets of respective government departments, including provincial governments. To enhance our broadband connectivity reach and in line with the 2016 Cabinet decision, South Africa is now ready to launch its own communication satellite through Centec in partnership with the National Space Agency and other key stakeholders. The communication satellite will address both media and broadband connectivity objectives and will entrench our technology and data sovereignty. This will reduce satellite capacity leasing costs not only for government but other industries reliant on communication satellite technologies for their businesses and improve information security for our country. digitizing of broadcasting. The completion of the broadcast digital migration further gives us an opportunity to trigger growth of the broadcasting and entertainment sector, commonly known as the creatives industry, through the licensing of new broadcasters and creating platforms of future to deliver content to South Africans. In this regard, Centec is developing a cloud-based hybrid streaming platform for content distribution, which will be available by no later than the third quarter of this financial year. This platform will support distribution of content through broadband, satellite, and terrestrial distribution networks. The platform will enable access to commercial, community, and public broadcasting services, both radio and television channels, and has the capability to provide information to the public as and when required. Access to the platform will also support mobile applications for iOS, Android, and Harmony devices. Furthermore, the Deputy Minister will announce a program by NEMISA to support emerging content producers. During the SONA debate earlier this year, I announced that we are going to issue policy directives for the availability of additional multiplexes for both DTT and DTH in order to avail additional TV channels, and with capacity for 102 television channels by 2025 to boost the growth of the creative industry. Engagements with the SABC are underway about additional channels it requires to support its competitiveness and profitability, and with the community broadcasters and other emerging and new broadcasters to utilize available and additional channels. Given the current onerous and burdensome requirements of local broadcasters, new entrants, in particular local, in the broadcasting sector, and restrictions on the community media that renders local broadcasting players uncompetitive, the department will finalize the draft audio and audiovisual content services policy and bill to protect the competitiveness and growth of South African broadcasting and creative industry, and amend the requirements for entry to advance media diversity whilst enabling the participation of South Africans. In addition, technological convergence has created regulatory overlaps and duplications where they did not exist before. To deal with this fragmentation, a single content regulator system that is tech and platform neutral, that includes a single content rating system, is needed to create a harmonized system. The Films and Publication Amendment Act of 2019, which the President operationalized on 1st May 2022, has significantly extended the scope of the Films and Publication Board towards this objective, and will work to align the responsibilities of the codes of conduct governing content matters between ICASA and the FPB to support the provisions of the Films and Publications Amendment Act. This alignment is necessary to address the concerns from traditional broadcasting and audiovisual service licensees regarding how the big tech companies are impacting on their revenues without contribution much to the development of the industry and local economy, owing to the lack of regulatory parity. Content creators, including news, are concerned about the usage of their content by big techs without any payment or without any regulatory intervention. As we table this budget vote, we remain concerned about the focus of the SABC on taking advantage of the technological advances and thus driving its competitiveness and sustainability. Basically, the SABC remains stuck in the past in an era where technology advances have changed how viewers consume their media content, and predominantly youth population demand compelling and informative content. The traditional television box is the past, and viewers consume content on the go. Viewers want to watch and hear themselves or their peers, or content that is value-adding to their development. We have given the board and management of the SABC until 30 June 2022 to submit a plan on how the public broadcaster is going to commercialize and monetize the opportunities availed through the broadcast digital migration. The SABC has also been directed on the prioritization and promotion of local content in its program acquisition. On our part, we continue to advance policy and ministerial interventions that support the competitiveness and sustainability of the SABC. To this end, and through the Minister of Finance, we secured the PFMA exemption for the SABC, and we continue to work with the Minister of Finance on the TV license fee waivers. The regulator, ICASA, has published the must carry regulations for the broadcasters that utilize the SABC content to have viable commercial agreements with the SABC. We're also finalizing the draft South African Broadcast Corporation SOC Limited Bill for cabinet approval before submission to Parliament. The draft bill positions the SABC as a multimedia organization capable of offering services across all platforms. The bill proposes provisions that will improve the governance of the SABC to make it commercially competitive whilst protecting its role as a national broadcaster. A weak SABC is not beneficial for South African broadcasting and creative industry. The SABC will rise again to be a broadcasting giant in our country and region. By digitizing processes, government can enhance services, save money, and improve citizens' quality of life. By digitizing government, By digitizing, governments can provide services that meet the evolving expectations of citizens and businesses, even in the period of tight budgets. Digitizing a government requires attention to two major considerations: the core capabilities of engaging citizens and businesses, and the organizational enablers that support those capabilities. This prescribes to us to stop boiling the ocean. SITA is in consultation with the Departments of Public Service and Administration and Communications and Digital Technologies will finalize a government digitization plan. We have, through SITA, commenced with some of the programs to utilize the South African, to digitize the South African government. This includes single view of the indigent project. This system is built on the database created by SITA to enable SAPO to receive applications for government set-top boxes, or this STB registration system for the BDM project. The system has now been expanded for use to manage housing subsidy beneficiaries by the Department of Human Settlement with back-end integration to the housing subsidy system. The Department of Human Settlement will immediately use this system in the management of housing beneficiaries of KZN and Eastern Cape flood disaster. Engagements are similarly underway with the Department of Health and Basic Education to expand the system to their environments. To support this program, the department will recruit approximately 2,500 unemployed graduates from the 44 districts and 8 metros as data capturers to convert the current paper records into the system. Towards e-learning. To expand the work of bridging the digital divide through digitizing South Africa, .ZETNA is partnering with the Department of Basic Education to deploy domain names in public schools through the provision of website and email addresses to learners and educators. The Deputy Minister will expand on this catalytic project as the department supports the Department of Basic Education in their path towards e-learning for all. On paperless government, the COVID-19 pandemic has propelled the move to electronic communications. Even the National Cabinet experienced an increase in number of ministers and deputy ministers using electronic cabinet record system, commonly known as e-cabinet. Within the existing technologies and framework agreements, the department will work with SITA and the DPSA to ensure that at a minimum, all national departments go paperless by using electronic workflow by the end of current financial year. This will improve the efficiency of government and maintain the integrity of government records that are a challenge for the audit processes. E-government, the department and SITA is in consultation with the DPSA and presidency will revise the current implementation of the national e-government strategy to align the government digitization plan. The focus of the rollout of e-services will remain on prioritizing high-impact public service that meet the evolving expectations of citizens and businesses. Citizens must be able to access the bulk of government services without the need to travel or braving the digital platform. Yesterday, as part of the World Telecommunication and Information Society celebrations, I unveiled the Digitech platform, which is a platform for digital products or applications developed by SMEs in South Africa. Digitech serves as a digital distribution service developed, maintained, and operated by the South African government. The platform allows users to browse and download apps developed across operating systems. It promotes South African developed digital products,
Honorable Minister, your time is
expanding their adoption and use. We are currently exploring how the current SITA and supply chain management regulations can
Your time is up, Honorable Minister. Thank you. Thank you very much. Can we now call on the chairperson, Honorable Maneli of the African National Congress? Honorable Maneli, thank you.
Honorable members, the Honorable Minister of DCT and Deputy Minister, all other ministers and deputy ministers, fellow South Africans. Honorable House Chairperson, let me from the outset make it clear that I rise on behalf of the ANC to support Budget Vote 30, Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, DCT. This debate takes place a day after the World Telecommunications Day, in a month recognized in the country as Africa Month. Both these events are taking place whilst we are still grappling with the COVID-19 pandemic that has ravaged the world, still with us. In this adversity, Africa must see an opportunity to accelerate its efforts in bridging the digital divide and press ahead with game-changing projects like building smart cities, as an example, Konza, Technopolis in Kenya, and other smart cities planned in the continent, such examples. and the deployment of internet connection balloons as towers in remote areas. Once again, Kenya and Vodacom plans to deploy these in parts of Mozambique, like Delgado comes to mind. This will go a long way in building a digital economy that is environmentally friendly in the African continent. Fellow South Africans, in the context of South Africa, it is important to remind ourselves that even post-apartheid regime, its legacy has been reflected even in how the departments have been structured, making it difficult to address the socio-economic conditions faced by South Africans. In order to ensure fulfillment of the mandate of putting up policies that address the digital divide and affordable access, supply-side issues and infrastructure rollout, and demand-side issues to facilitate inclusivity, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa in the 2019 and 2020 State of the Nation addresses, SONAS, pronounced the rationalization of state departments and state-owned companies, SOCs. The Department of Communications and the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services were merged to form the new Department of Communications and Digital Technologies DCDT under one ministry and one Director General. The mandate of DCDT is to enable South Africa's digital transformation to achieve digital inclusion and economic growth by creating an enabling policy and regulatory environment. This is done through the implementation of existing legislation, which provides for participation of multi-stakeholders for inclusive digital transformation, intervention to reinforce competition and facilitate innovation across the value chain, measures to address issues raised by the ICT and convergence, and the establishment of the new national postal policy framework. Honorable Chairperson, the ANC's 54th National Conference, amongst others, resolved the following. On ICT Resolution 3.5, the ANC must ensure the implementation of the resolutions to support the post office, including that government business must be availed to the post office through intergovernmental framework to maximize the use and value of the post office infrastructure to achieve its developmental mandate. The post office should continuously review its business models to cope with the challenges arising from the digital industrial revolution. On 3.7, there must be a strong regulatory intervention to deal with the question of high cost to communicate, and the ANC must support the campaign for data to fall and the monopolization of data. This is regarded as stifling economic inclusion. On 3.9, government must review the mandate of SITA to not only be procurer, but enable local capacity production of software and hardware products, unbundle the value chain, etc. SITA should be transformed and repurposed to provide high quality information technology services aligned to the digital age. On 3.11, as part of rationalization of SOCs, consideration must be made to implement the decision to merge BBI and Centec. This should be underpinned by the overall policy on SOC reform to improve service delivery and investment in infrastructure. On broadcasting, in particular 4.10, DTT presents an opportunity for the SABC to introduce multi-channel programming to ensure its viability as a broadcaster of choice, and this could ensure that Parliament Channel Community TV could be on SABC platform. SABC must be positioned as a content provider of choice, protect and be a repository of our cultural identity, etc. In giving meaning to these resolutions, on record it is confirmed that the repurposing of SITA as a state ICT company is beginning to show good results. The merger of BBI and Centec is underway to form a state digital infrastructure company that will ensure speedy delivery of broadband connectivity and other services in order to be an important player in the ICT sector, especially at a time when Centec can't depend on the SABC as a major client. The post office, after many years of mismanagement and misuse of bailouts by predecessors, has now an agreed turnaround strategy with the department supported by the committee, which needs support of National Treasury to succeed. as the post office cannot be allowed to fail given its role. Fellow South African, information from State SA reveals that there were 12.5 million unemployed people during the fourth quarter of 2021. The overall unemployment rate was 46.2%. The youth was 77%, for Africans 50.7%, for African women 55.7%, and Eastern Cape, Limpopo, Mpumalanga were 53.2%, 52.8%, and 52.4% respectively. In addition, the Competition Commission's recent report titled and quote, Measurement of Concentration and Participation in the South African Economy, Levels and Trends, exposes high levels of concentration and dominance by a few in the communication space. The example is that 3 firms provide 75% of home fiber connections, with 80% of consumers connected by the top 4 ISPs. It is against this reality that we must support and congratulate ICASA on the auctioning of spectrum and making spectrum available for the wireless open access network, commonly known as WOM, to be released once its model is finalized. We need to be unapologetic in supporting BBBE and SMME increased intake in the execution of programs by Centec, BBI, USASA, USAF, and CETA. All these are a direct response to transforming the digital economy to be inclusive, as envisaged by SONAS and the resolutions of the ANC, as already stated. Honorable House Chairperson, the department has a budget of 7.7 billion rands over the MTEF, of which 72.2% is allocated for transfers to entities for their operations and for project-specific funding. The compensation of employees is the second cost driver, and the DCT has committed to remain within its ceiling on this item. We remain confident that both the department and its entities will be able to accelerate delivery irrespective of the limited resources available. ICASA, working with the Competitions Commission, will be implementing the Competitions Commission's report and its own data market inquiry report, which is important in the reduction of the cost to communicate. We also welcome that the department will be using this budget vote as an opportunity to fast-track legislative reforms, some of which are important for the sustainability of the SABC as the public broadcaster and the South African Post Office as an important entity with universal service obligations. Honorable members, as I conclude, allow me to quote from O.R. Tambo, the late president of the ANC, addressing the 48th National Conference in Durban in 1991, and I quote, "Before I sit down, I wish to make a few observations. We did not tear ourselves apart because of lack of progress at times. We were always ready to accept our mistakes and to correct them. Above all, we succeeded to foster and defend the unity of the ANC and the unity of our people in general. Even in bleak moments, we were never in doubt regarding the winning of freedom. We have never been in doubt that whose cause shall triumph." Those quote. After years of setbacks, we never had doubts that ICASA would auction the spectrum, and indeed the spectrum has been auctioned. The people want an economy that is transformed, even with the setbacks of target are not completely achieved. We must never doubt that the people's cause shall triumph and that the economy indeed will be transformed to be inclusive. As Chair, the ANC once again stands to support this budget vote. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Lesoma, you were disrupting the Honorable Member. Can I now call Honorable Bodlani of the DA?
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Honorable members, fellow South Africans, On the 29th of March 2022, the minister addressed the committee and reassured the committee that the country's digital migration connection was on track. The minister stated that she had personally overseen the distribution of over 9,000 set-top boxes. That said, Chairperson, it would be remiss of us to not see how the ruling of the Johannesburg High Court on the ETV and others versus the Minister of Communications and Digital Community Technologies and others was a saving grace for the minister and her department. The deferment of the analog switch-off date from 31st March to 30 June is undeniably giving the department a reprieve, as it was clear that they would have been left embarrassed by missing their self-imposed deadline on the rollout. We stand in agreement with the sentiments of the court that it is in the interest of the country, the economy, and all South Africans that digital migration be finalized. The Democratic Alliance is mindful that the release of more spectrum by ICASA means better quality service for consumers with fewer dropped calls, faster internet download speed, and the promise of lower data cost. Sadly, the last time South Africa released spectrum was in 2004-2005. Therefore, the Democratic Alliance welcomes the auction of high-demand spectrum licensing by ICASA with the hope that it will indeed serve as a key pillar for the state's economic structural reform. The slow pace of releasing the spectrum is a reminder that 28 years into democracy, the digital divide remains and, dare I say, widens. Chair, this is a serious indictment on the ruling party, and we note the efforts of civil society in fighting for the poor to have access to digital services. Sadly, while ICASA and Telkom were embroiled in a legal battle and the country left in limbo on the auction process, very little information came to the committee. As such, as members of this committee, we had to rely on media reports for update, as the matter of the spectrum auction was never placed on the recent formal agenda of the committee while the auction and its challenges unfolded. This, Chairperson, speaks to the lackluster process of this Parliament. The mandate of portfolio committees as oversight bodies is clear. However, the tendency of dealing with serious matters retrospectively continues, and it is a threat to our democracy. The DA calls on this Parliament to strive to deal with matters in real time if we are to improve anything in South Africa. The total capital expenditure for the state IT agency, SITA, for the financial year 22-23 is budgeted at 750 million rands. However, the actual total capex requirements far exceed this amount. The notion that SITA may have to consider borrowing as well as applying for conditional grants
House Chair.
Honorable Chair, I think she's been load-shedded.
Yeah.
No, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, House Chair. I think she's just...
It's the member who is okay. Can we then move to the next speaker?
House Chair, before we do so, can we just establish with you, whether she'll be allowed to finish her speech or we can...
Yes, okay. No, she will be allowed.
Thank you.
Can we ask Honorable Tambo of the EFF?
Thank you very much, House Chair. House Chair would be committing a disservice to the people of South Africa if we did not begin by condemning the dishonorable, alarming and inhumane revelations of ministers, deputy ministers and officials in this department spending over 15 million rand on accommodation and catering since 2019. Unbeknown to us all is why these parasites spend so much money on accommodation and catering during a global pandemic, where meetings and engagements were held virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today, some of these very parasites are amongst us, addressing us, planning a budget with us, simply because they conveniently belong to the appropriate
Chairperson,
they must be ashamed.
Point of order, can I hear you, Honorable Hadebe?
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm rising on Rule 84. The member has just used an unparliamentary language by calling the members of the House parasites.
Yes, that's
Which
correct,
ones?
Honorable Member.
Which members did I call? House Chair? Which members were referred to as parasites?
No, whoever is the member, you said they are parasites. They are honorable members. Can you withdraw that statement?
Chair.
Yes, Honorable Mautwe.
Yes. No, I don't agree. I mean, he has not said a specific person is a parasite. He's just saying parasites
No,
in this.
We have
Yeah, so please allow Honorable Tambo to finish his speech, please.
I will
Honorable Khadebe, just wait. We know you get paid for calling point of orders. When I'm just wait.
Honorable Mautwe, I have given a ruling to say this honorable member, Tambo, must withdraw that statement.
But it's a stray bullet, Chair, with respect. It's like when we say Lama Sela in the House, we're not referring to anyone specific.
No, point of order on Member Gwangwa and Member Tambo, Chair.
Chairperson,
But if there are people who feel like they are parasites, they must say so, so we can know who not to call parasites. Who's not a parasite? Who feels like they're a
Order
parasite?
on what Member Gwangwa said and Member Tambo. I want to raise
Honorable Tambo, can you please withdraw that statement?
I would draw, Chair.
Honorable Tambo, you withdraw. Thank you very much. Can you proceed then?
These
But Chair,
individuals.
you must also be fair, Chair. He never referred to any specific member. You must not be bullied by Honorable Khadebe, who's just getting paid all the time for calling point of order. There's not a single city where Khadebe does not call a point of order, even when a flight passes. He calls point of order.
Point of order, Chair.
Honorable Mautwe, can I appeal to you to ask for recognition? You cannot just speak. Otherwise, we will be disrupting the proceedings. Honorable Tambo, can you proceed?
I will see.
Thank you, House Chair.
Okay.
Today, some of these people are amongst us addressing us, planning a budget with us simply because they conveniently belong to the correct faction. They must be ashamed that in the face of massive retrenchments, closure of businesses and death, they live the lavish lifestyle. They must address us knowing that we know them for what they are, as leeches, opportunists, and vultures who cycled around the dead bodies of our people in a time of tragedy. House Chair, we are here today to reject this budget, which is characterized by austerity that defines this incompetent government. It is a department defined by inadequacy due to budget constraints and the misuse of money. The implementation of the SA Connect broadband policy, adopted almost a decade ago, which seeks to provide broadband connectivity to district municipalities, has been a complete failure. Yet we are told in this report that we must transition to phase 2 of the project. Phase 1, which set out to connect 6,135 government facilities, which include schools, health facilities, post offices, police stations, and government offices, in the 8 rural district municipalities to broadband services, only managed to connect 970 government facilities. So on what basis do you plan to transition to phase 2? The auction of spectrum has proved to be a disaster, which has reaffirmed the duopoly of MTN and Vodacom. There's little hope that data prices will ever fall. In the main, the market will continue to be dominated by Vodacom and MTN, both of which left the auction with an additional 110 megahertz and 100 megahertz respectively. With Vodacom and MTN each spending 5.4 and 5.2 billion, it means all the money will now have to be recovered through the ordinary consumer. In essence, the hope for more competition in the market to force data prices to fall is lost, possibly for good. This is while the consumers will be paying the price. Data will continue to be expensive and a thing for the rich and privileged. You lack planning and concern for the poor. Your lack of planning and concern for the poor is further exhibited by your handling of the process of digital migration. Television services are part of the modern information age. In fact, it is part of a constitutional right to access information, particularly as it relates to government actions, decisions, and reports. An estimate of over 8 million mainly poor South Africans will be left out of the free-to-air television services should the analog signal be immediately switched off or on the deadline that has been set now, without provision of set-top boxes to the poor. A simple strategy would be to use the SASA database as a legitimate basis to distribute set-top boxes, because your application system is exclusionary and elitist, but because you have no imagination beyond hotel bookings, our people must suffer. Instead of doing this, spending in the Broadcasting Digital Migration Sub-Program in the ICT Infrastructure Development and Support Program is expected to decrease from 1.3 billion in 2021-2022 to 84.1 million in 2024-25 at an average annual rate of 59.5%. At Centec, revenue is expected to decrease at an average annual rate of 1.3% from 1.5 billion in 2021-2022 to 1.4 billion in 2024-2025 because of the analog signal network being switched off, resulting in television revenue decreasing slightly before recovering again. This is yet another indicator of your lack of planning around digital migration. This is effectively a decision to take a majority of our population into the dark ages. For the SABC, advertising revenue is expected to increase by 13% in the financial year 2023. We must applaud the CAS and specifically the EFF for ensuring that the parasitic must-carry regulations are amended to require subscription broadcasters to carry the public broadcasters' channels subject to commercially negotiable terms. The report should have, however, outlined what percentage of the projected revenue increases in advertising stem from the airing of the public broadcasters' content on subscription broadcasters. 13% does not seem like a convincing figure of an outcome of commercially negotiated terms with subscription broadcasters over the public broadcaster content. At the South African Post Office, we have implemented the shallow thinking of attempting to rescue the financial position of an entity by firing people. What do you euphemistically call the staff optimization project is simply retrenchments. We have resolved to retrench 6,021 workers at the Post Office by 2024-2025, only to decrease your expenditure, which will only decrease your expenditure by 4.8%. Nowhere does this illustrate how you will rejuvenate postal services. There's no illustration of how the entity will be revolutionized and capacitated to be able to compete with emerging private sector courier services in particular. Retrenchments are at the center of your doom strategy. The entities in this department are characterized by poor management, debt, and lack of strategic setting of achievable objectives, in line with a dependable allocation of a budget. It is a department led by people with no appetite to integrate our people into adequate ICT infrastructure and determined to exclude the poor in the agenda of digital migration, internet connectivity, and access information. It is a department led by parasites, and we reject this budget vote.
Your time is up, Honorable Member.
Thank you.
There's a point of order here.
Yes, can I hear the point of order?
Yes, House Chair, with regard to the member from the Democratic Alliance, my colleague, we propose that the 3 minutes she had left be added to myself being Malatsi on the list because she won't be able to return to continue with her speech. Thank you.
That's accepted, but it's 2 minutes something, but we have recorded that.
Yeah, it was 2 minutes and it was 2 minutes and 58 seconds.
Let's not argue about it. Can I now call Honorable Singh of the IFP?
Chairperson.
Honorable Hadebe.
The previous speaker has repeated again that the members of this house who are leading the department are parasites. I think that something must be done around that. Thank you, Chair. It's unparliamentary.
I've noted it. Can you proceed, Honorable Singh of the IFP?
Chair.
Thank you.
Here
we go again.
On the point of order in terms of Rule 84, the same member called the leaders of this department vultures, all sorts of animal names he used, which is not allowed in terms of parliamentary language. And you must look at that because he not only used parasites, he also used names of animals.
When I'm on hope, we're busy, please. Yes.
Vultures, leeches, parasites.
Chair, she opens her mic without being recognized. This is the 3rd time she does that.
Honorable Pabo, I have noted the comments of the Honorable Member. Would follow up on that. Can I now allow Honorable Singh?
Right, I was hesitating a bit, Chairperson, in case somebody else came in, but thank you very much. Honorable Chairperson, I present these comments on behalf of the IFP as prepared by Honorable Machozi, who is on sick leave currently. The communications space wherein the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies locates itself is fast-paced and ever-changing. As the IFP, we therefore note the announcement that, and I quote, the DCDT will in the medium term focus on developing new and revising existing policies, strategies, and legislation, close quote. This is an important step, considering that the country's National Integrated ICT Policy White Paper is a 2016 document and more than 5 years out of date. Sadly, Chairperson, many of the department's commitments are not worth the paper they are printed on. Take, for instance, a commitment listed in the committee's report that the analog transmitter switch-off is targeted for 31 March 2022 across all provinces. It is now common knowledge that the department failed to meet this deadline, which has yet again been extended to 30th June 2022. While we can understand that the information in the report might not be up to date, and we heard the minister speak on this, as it was collated some time ago, there is no excuse for the department's website to be outdated. On the homepage, banners are still saying, and I quote, register at the nearest post office before 31 October 2021 to get a free digital decoder installation, close quote. And that quote, registrations after 31 October 2021 will only be connected 3 to 6 months after the switch off, close quote. While these outdated notices could be viewed as an embarrassment to the department, the real embarrassment, Honourable Chairperson, is that South Africa has not yet completed its digital migration. And the country is much more than a few months off the pace. The initial analog terrestrial television switch-off deadline per the then Minister I.B. Katsiburi was 1 November 2011. That was more than 10 years ago. Not only did we miss our internal deadlines, South Africa is the biggest loser in Africa too, as we failed to make the International Telecommunication Union's analog broadcast switch-off deadline on 17 June 2015. The question is, what has government been doing in the 7 years since? 6 months ago, the Deputy Communications Minister, Mapulana, said, and I quote, we are late, as we know that the entire continent has migrated, and we are the last to migrate as a country, and it's something we should not really be proud of given our resources as a country. We should have been the one leading this migration, close quote. Yet, despite admitting to having resources and then admitting shame at being left in the dust, the department again failed to meet its deadline of 31 March 2022. Chairperson, one shudders to think what this protracted delay on the part of government has cost the people of South Africa, not only in rands and cents, but in opportunities. Then we have SA Connect, a 2013 initiative which, and I quote, seeks to meet the technology goals of the National Development Plan, close quote. Phase 1 was meant to provide connectivity to 6,135 government facilities. The department managed only 970 facilities, leaving 5,165 facilities that were not provided with the broadband service. Budget constraints were cited as a reason for this pitiful performance, but surely such a huge discrepancy between the envisioned outcome and actual results should have become evident in the planning stages. Honourable Chairperson, as the IFP, we have to ask, is any planning, monitoring, and evaluation taking place in this department? And how is performance measured? When the people of South Africa are left isolated and disconnected, who is being taken to task and held responsible? Where is consequence management? The department's laundry list of failures and missteps goes on, and as one examines the Portfolio Committee report, it is difficult to find anything to celebrate. Let's talk about the SA Post Office. 4.2 billion rand in debt with pitiful prospects. The SABC, among others, quote, unable to achieve annual target revenues, and, quote, greater concern about the improper governance practices, close quote. Centec is, quote, struggling to attract new customers. Honourable Chairperson, as the IFP, we are deeply concerned at the inability of this department to achieve its targets, maintain clean audits, and even deliver the most basic of services. Subject to the above serious concerns, which we expect the Minister to provide us with effective remedial action, the IFP will reluctantly support this budget vote. I thank you, Honourable Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honourable can you please switch off your Honorable Tambo? I gave a ruling and you agreed to withdraw a statement that you made. And I think honorable members know if they don't agree with the ruling of the chairperson, they know what they are supposed to do. Now you repeated that when you were leaving the platform. Can I call on you to withdraw the statements that you made, because I did give a ruling. Otherwise, that would be seen as something that negatively impacts on what we are doing as this mini plenary. Can I ask Honorable Tambo to withdraw the statement that he made as he was going to sit down? Honorable Tambo, are you still part of in the platform? I'm talking to Honorable Tambo. Other members and this engagement, when I've given a ruling, I think it is actually disrupting. Well, I think I've given my expectation of Honorable Tambo, what I expected him to do. Can we move to the next speaker, Honorable Vessels from FF+?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Chairperson, a lot can be said about and has been said about the state of the public broadcaster, the delay in the release of broad spectrum, missing deadlines, and the repetition of empty promises each year, and also the lack of consequence management in this department and its entities. But, Chairperson, I want to focus on the South African Post Office, which is and should be a backbone and very critical to economic development, and especially is postal services crucial to small business development. As at the 31st of January 2022, the South African Post Office owed landlords 304 million rand for their rent. That obviously caused and is the cause of a lot of branches of the South African Post Office being closed, locked, because of the outstanding rent. Whilst a lot of poor people in South Africa are dependent on grants and dependent on post office to receive those grants, it is unacceptable that nothing is being done about this. This is a failure of the most vulnerable, where people need access to post office branches, especially for their social relief of distress grants during the past couple of months and the COVID period. Chairperson, now the Post Office is selling properties, 14 of their properties, to try and cover their debt. But these auctions will only cover 8% of the outstanding debt to landlord. And that is a huge problem. Also, it is of concern that most of these properties, the reserve prices listed for these properties are lower than market value. Why is an entity that's in financial trouble selling off assets at a lower price than it should be? It just doesn't make sense. At the end of the financial year ending 31st of March 2020, the losses incurred by the Post Office was 1.8 billion rand. Its current liabilities exceeds its assets by 1.5 billion rand. It, for instance, owes Telkom 2.69 million or 269 million rand. But what is the cause of the total destruction and collapse of the Post Office? It's not the business model. It's not the sector which it is operating in, because there's a lot of private sector companies that are making a lot of money and are lucrative, providing and the services that the gap was left by the post office, which failed. Courier services are doing well. Now the business model is changing and there's all proposals to get the post office in other sectors and cash cows and so forth. But that's not the reason why the post office is collapsing and has been destroyed. The reason, Chairperson, is because of corruption. The reason is because of a bloated staff component. It's because of financial mismanagement. It's about financial and management instability. It's about incompetence. A lot of people have to go to the private sector and other courier companies because of the fact that parcels get lost and it's complete chaos at post office. And let me say, Chairperson, die poskantoor is vernietig, net soos die SABC, deur boewe en parasiete. En dis waaroor dit gaan. Dit het niks met die dienste te doen nie. Dis die totale mislukking van die ANC-regering wat die poskantoor en al die ander entiteite van hierdie regering totaal en al vernietig het. En u laat die mense van Suid-Afrika in die steek. Ek dank u.
Thank you. Can I now call on the Deputy Minister? As I do so, I'll be handing over to Honorable Janki. That Honorable Tambo left the platform, and let's leave it at that. Can I call on the Deputy Minister? And as I do so, I'll hand over.
House Chair.
Yes, Honorable Mauta.
House Chair.
What is your point of order? I assume it's a point of order.
It's very dangerous for you to say that Honorable Tambo left. What informs that? Yes, my point of order is that you are wrong. How did you arrive at the conclusion that he left? So there are network issues here. Why do you conclude that he left? It could have been a network problem.
Honorable Maupe, can I be allowed to chair this session up to the end? And I'm saying I have been advised by the people who are controlling the system. If he might have left because of what you are saying, that's still fine, because I could not speak to him. That's what I was actually demanding from him, to say he must withdraw that statement. But if he is not there, I think we'll take up the matter. Can I allow the Deputy Minister to take over and allow Honorable Janki?
Chair.
Yes.
Member Papo, I rise in terms of Rule 84. The last speaker from the FF Plus, who thinks that some of us cannot understand Saver Afrikaans, he also used the word parasites, but in Afrikaans. Look at the record, you will see it. He thought we don't understand Afrikaans.
No, look at the record, yes.
Honorable Chairperson, on a point of order.
Yes.
No, Chairperson, it has nothing to do with the fact that other members won't understand it. I'll say it in English as well. The post office was destroyed by parasites.
Can we move on this Honorable Hope? And
no, Chair, I think you must call him, you must ask him to withdraw.
Yes.
Please ask him to withdraw, Chair.
This is the problem.
Honorable Vessels, can you withdraw that?
What would they be withdrawing, Chair?
Unfortunately.
Actually, I've given a ruling in the first statement that was given, and I've indicated members, honorable members, if you don't agree with the ruling that I've given, you know what process to follow.
Chair, may I say something?
Yes, please say something.
In the ruling, in the original ruling, I think the person who rose on a point of order took exception to the fact that someone might have referred to honorable members of parliament as parasites. Now, Honorable Vessels is saying the post office was destroyed by parasites. So what's wrong with that statement?
So that's a difference.
There's a difference, a complete difference.
No, let me look at it, and I think I'll come back. I think I agree with you. That is why I was saying I was not calling on him to say he must withdraw. I agree with you. He didn't say the same thing in the same way that was said by Honorable Tam. Can that be my ruling? I will not ask him to withdraw. Can Honorable Mautwe please allow this session to go on properly? Can I hand over to the Deputy Minister and Honorable Dangi?
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister of Communications, and you are now recognized.
Yeah, go take a little.
Honorable,
thank you very much, House Chairperson.
Go ahead.
To the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Honorable Kumbuzo Nchaveni, Honorable members of our portfolio committee as led by Chairperson Maneli and all the honorable members of Parliament, the acting DG and other senior departmental officials, esteemed guests, fellow South Africans. On this day 90 years ago, a towering giant of the South Africa's national democratic revolution, born into a working class family.
Honorable Deputy Minister, just hold. Order. What's your point of order, Honorable Member?
Yeah, I'm wondering if the Deputy Minister would like to take a question.
When I'm done, I'm glad to take a question as soon as I'm finished my speech.
Thank you. Question declined. Go ahead, Honorable Deputy Minister.
Born into a working class family in a village in Engcobo in the then Transkei, Walter Sisulu grew up to be one of the outstanding leaders of the ANC in the struggle against apartheid colonialism. The nation owes this gallant hero of our liberation struggle, and indeed this generation of freedom fighters, a great debt of gratitude for the indelible contribution he and others have made towards our political liberation. We in the glorious movement for which Walter Sisulu belonged, the ANC, vow never to betray the cause for which he sacrificed his life. We shall continue with the fundamental program of socio-economic transformation to bring about changes to the majority of our people, blacks in general and Africans in particular. Honorable Chair, the notion that the ministry spends millions on accommodation must be rejected with the contempt it deserves, as it is nothing but sensational reporting and a populist posture devoid of any truth. The facts are there for anybody who's interested. The department is committed to transforming the ICT sector and to building a digital economy in a manner that no one is left behind. In this regard, Chair, I would like to emphasize the points raised by the Minister that as a department we have migrated indigent households in 5 of the 9 provinces from analog to digital broadcasting, and we are well on course to meet the June deadline that was set by the court. We have connected 970 government facilities under the SA Connect Phase 1, and we are well underway to roll out Phase 2 of the SA Connect project. We have trained 91,211 citizens in digital skills and provided over 7,700 courses, among some of the achievements of the department. We remain committed to ensuring that the opportunities presented by the digital economy are not the preserve of the privileged few, but are indeed enjoyed by all the people of our country. We owe this to the memory of Walter Sisulu. Honorable Chair, the 2020 Agenda for Sustainable Development acknowledges that the spread of information and communication technology and global interconnectivity has great potential to accelerate human development and to bring the digital divide. According to recent General Household Survey by Stats SA, the proportion of households who use only cellular phones as a means of communications increased by 1.6% from 87.8% in 2019 to 89.40% in 2020. Households using both cellular phones and fixed or landline increased from 7.1% in 2018 to 8.3% in 2019. The above statistical information abundantly illustrates the point that ours is a fast-growing sector with a huge impact to make in the socio-economic development of our country. Much has been said about the South African Post Office. SAPO, since its establishment on the 2nd of March 1792, in a small room next to the pantry of a Cape Town castle by the colonial settlers, has evolved and grown over the years to be the vehicle for service delivery and connecting the unconnected through its wide footprint of over 2,400 points of presence in the country and international network reaching over 187 countries. Over the years, this important national asset has experienced significant revenue decline as a result mainly of the changing market conditions exacerbated by the rapid technological advances, leading to the declining volumes of letter post, which was the core of the business of the post office. Since then, SAPO has been struggling to reposition itself in line with the changed market conditions. Since assuming office in August last year, the ministers myself has been seized with helping SAPO to reposition itself, which efforts culminated in the adoption of the Post Office of Tomorrow strategy. Through this strategy, we are committed to repositioning SAPO to provide a diversified and expanded service to positioning it as a logistic platforms for e-commerce. We will digitize the Post Office to be a dedicated and designated authentication authority that fulfills its role as a national trust center in the age of digital identity and services. Through its expansive infrastructure and postal network, we will transform the post offices, especially in the rural areas, to become digital hubs so to serve communities as well as be a platform for unemployed youth and potential entrepreneurs. As government, we remain committed to the turnaround of SAPO to be financially sustainable as well as to re-engineering its product and service portfolio. We are engaged with National Treasury on the required recapitalization of the entity. As we reposition SAPO to be a leading logistics service provider for South Africa and the region, we will forge strategic partnerships that are crucial enablers for SAPO's e-commerce and logistics strategy. In this regard, the department has finalized the South African Post Office Amendment Bill in line with the Post Office of Tomorrow strategy. The bill is out for public comment after being approved by Cabinet recently. We hope to submit it to Parliament before the end of this year so that it can be processed. We will soon be finalizing the filling of vacancies in the board and capacitate the entity executive management level. Honorable House Chair, the Internet has become an integral part of our everyday life, changing how we live, work, and interact with each other. The age of the Internet has not only brought about the convergence of technologies, which is continuously blurring traditional market distinctions and boundaries, but also with the rapid proliferation of and ubiquitous online streaming platforms which resulted in connected citizens. And so the state must, consistent with the injunctions of the Constitution, to respect, protect, and promote and fulfill the fundamental rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights, regulate the creation, production, possession, and distribution of films, game, publications, and content distributed online that may be deemed harmful or prohibited using the Film and Publication Act. We are extremely delighted on the coming into operation on the 1st of March 2022 of the Amendment Act of 29 through a proclamation by the President. This Amendment Act has transformed the FPB from a historically narrow classification authority into a fully fledged regulator with legitimate powers to issue and renew content distribution licenses to both local and international distributors, and to develop regulations to enforce compliance, impose penalties in case of non-compliance. Given the fact that the scope and mandate of the FPB has increased threefold, we requested the entity to reimagine its future role through the development of online content regulator of the future strategy, for which I'm delighted to report that it has been finalized and submitted to the department. The online content regulator of the future proposes a fundamental shift in both the governance and funding model, including looking at the fragmentation of and regulatory overlaps among the different regulators in the country, and proposes measures to improving regulatory efficiencies. We welcome the proposal in the strategy for a single content regulatory system that is technology and platform neutral. Efforts are already underway to transform the entity to align it with the new expanded mandate. Honorable Chair, we plan to launch the Online Safety Youth Council during the month of June at the Youth Online Safety Summit as part of the National Youth Month. The main objective being to involve the South African youth in promoting online safety as prescribed for in the Act. In doing so, we recognize that the youth are not only the biggest consumers of content online, they are equally the biggest victims of cyberbullying. According to Global Advisor's cyberbullying study, cyberbullying has significantly increased in South Africa, with 25% of parents saying that their children have been victims of cyberbullying. Honorable members, digital technologies such as digital automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, augmented reality, 3D printing, and a range of other digital technologies are changing the nature of jobs that were routinely performed by humans. As various sectors of the economy continue to use and depend on these new digital technologies, the legacy skills as well as existing ICT skills are becoming obsolete, and this increases the demand for new digital skills. This changes requires humans to be equipped with the relevant and necessary skills to perform the new jobs. To address the digital skills deficit in South Africa, the National Digital and Future Skills Strategy seeks to ensure that the youth of South Africa are provided with the necessary level of basic digital skills that will enable them to function within a 21st century world that is increasingly pervaded by and dependent upon digital technologies. NEMISA to date has trained 6,000 people in digital literacy and a total of 7,000 trained on other digital skills like data science, cloud computing, and machine learning. The department partnered with GIS to train 2,000 youth not in employment, education, and training on digital literacy. NEMISA plans to train about 60,000 SMMEs on digital entrepreneurship programs and 14,590 on broadcasting skills. NEMISA has been directed to also focus more on partnership with other state entities and government departments. In this regard, the MOUs have been concluded with, among others, the Department of Military Veterans to train military veterans on various digital technology skills to the tune of over 27 million, the Bank SETA to train a number of banking beneficiaries on various digital technologies to the tune of 59 million, and MIC SETA on its discretionary grant for learnerships in the Western Cape, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, Walter Sisulu counsels us that, and I open quote, there are no shortcuts, there are no easy answers, there are no complete formulas, only continuous campaigning among the people, with continuous response to their own activities, taking them a step forward each time can lead us to our goal, close quote. This prophetic articulation by our revered freedom fighter is what is guiding us in the service to our nation. And I would like to thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. I now recognize the Honorable Nkwankwa.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Well, you will recall it is public knowledge that the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa collected about 14.4 billion rands during the recent spectrum auction. In fact, the President Ramaphosa, reacting to the spectrum auction, said, and I quote, "The auction of spectrum is an important achievement." He continued and said, "It was delayed for many years due to policy drift, state incapacity, and vested interests that were the feature of the era of state capture," end quote. What probably the president also forgot to mention was that the spectrum allocation was the first in 17 years, and the process obviously had been delayed for the reasons that he has stated. For these reasons, especially the one where he cited state incapacity as a problem, we take all the commitments that have been made by the minister and the department here with a pinch of salt, due to the many numerous deadlines they have missed on a number of issues. Even as we make these points believing that there should be strict time frames that should be set for the reduction of the cost of communication in South Africa. We say this primarily because I'm sure many of you would remember that the failure to address the huge gap of internet access between rural and urban areas was evident during the pandemic. We learned the significance of access to internet, and it was said that learners and workers residing particularly in rural areas were suffering to access internet and to be able to learn. It's important, as we make this point as well, Chair, to remember that while we must celebrate the auction of the spectrum, the recent auction, that when we visited China on an official visit in 2015, China was already on 6G, and we're sure that very soon they may be on 8G. So while this is worth celebrating, we still have a lot of catching up to do with respect to the rest of the world. We welcome the plans and the intentions to make sure that the post office becomes centers of technology. But as post office, makabane funa zingafani nezatep zenu zingenamanzi. Apho nizawumane nisincokolela kwi-speeches ezibhalwe kakuhle nithi niconnecte ii-villages ezinga emanzini zibe zingaphumi itep amanzi. Uzawufumanisa ukuthi ezi centers ze-technology nifuna ukuzenza bazawuphinda abantu bakuthi bangakwazi uaccessa le technology ibambekayo due to maladministration and poor management of the post office. Ningaba kwanina nohluliweyo completely kwanje ukuthumela ii-letters. All entities in this department should improve to position the department as an enabler to an inclusive growth in the ICT sector. It is therefore important that we ensure that we speed up the public's internet penetration rate, which is still very low by international standards at about 68.2% of the total population. This means even if we're able to push prices down.
Expired and goes in Chow, your time has expired. I bring good onto the platform.
Thank you, House Chairperson. Chairperson, it is surely time for South Africa to be having a serious conversation over whether access to data, like access to potable water and healthcare, should fall into the category of a basic human right. By commodifying data and pricing it out of the range of the majority of our citizens, we drastically restrict access to the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution, perpetuating and deepening inequality. As things are, instead of leveling the playing field as we hoped it might, the much heralded age of technology is serving to heighten the mounds of privilege and deepen the troughs of poverty. Government wants 80% of the population to have access to the internet by 2024. But access to the internet is of little worth to those who cannot afford data. It's a bit like people with theoretical access to electricity, but who live in the dark because they cannot afford to pay for any of it. According to the 2019 General Household Survey, 64.7% of South African households had at least one member with access to the internet, either at home, workplace, place of study, or internet cafes. But just over 10% of South African households had access to the internet at home. Yet more and more of modern life takes place online. More people work remotely, access educational materials on the internet, and do their shopping electronically. Digital skills are in higher demand in the workplace, in the health space, and in commerce. Those without the ability to fund data are once again being left in the dirt. We have to ask ourselves if the re-impoverishment of more or less the same group of people who were deliberately impoverished under apartheid is either desirable or sustainable. How do we grow an economy in an environment in which most people can't participate? It beggars belief that the cost of data in South Africa is amongst the highest in the world. In Isona, President Ramaphosa drew attention to the Competition Commission having instructed mobile operators to adjust their pricing to reduce the digital inequality. The operators lowered the poverty premium on lower denomination prepaid mobile bundles, but this is hardly enough. The rich, with their greater purchasing power, still pay less for data. The President referred to the Competition Commission having proposed a free lifeline data package to provide a certain amount of free data daily at no cost, and that would be a good place to start. For it to work for all implies developing sufficient telecommunications infrastructure to cover the nation, and it is time for this proposal to see the light of day. With will and dexterity, we can close this gap, demonstrate the value we put on reducing inequality, and lift the false ceilings that trap the disconnected and keep them down. I thank you, House Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Heron. I now recognize the African National Congress, Honorable Mulala.
Honorable Minister, Honorable House Chair, Honorable Members, fellow South Africans. Information and communication technologies have become an increasingly important tool for development, providing access to information for science, technology, innovation, and fostering and enhancing regional and international cooperation. Along with the rest of the world, South Africa has been catapulted by the pandemic into an environment that requires rapid digital transformation. A study conducted by Harvard University Review in 2019 revealed that South Africa is a regional leader in the ease of creating digital jobs. South Africa is also a regional leader in the deployment of several emerging technologies, such as biometric data, payment cards to deliver social security, drones in mining, which helps to keep it at an innovative edge. Our ICT sector continues to demonstrate signs of growth, recording 243.6 billion in revenue in 2021, up from 243 billion in 2020. According to the State of the ICT Sector in South Africa report published by ICASA earlier this year, the total sector revenue increased by 0.3%. Having noted all the advancement made, the ANC is of the view that it can be done to leverage the ICT sector and all that the fourth industrial revolution has to offer in order to respond to socio-economic challenges we face in our society today. As we celebrate the opportunities that come with new technologies, allow me also to take this opportunity to recognize one of the people who have contributed immensely towards science, innovation, technology, and engineering in our country. The Deputy Chairperson of the Presidential Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Vice Chancellor of the University of Johannesburg, Professor Chilitsi Marawala, for his election to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Professor Marawala has been elected to the Academy as a new international honorary member to form part of the 261 members elected this year. The African National Congress wish him well as he embarks also in his new journey. And as we remain proud and confident that he will fly the South African flag higher. Honorable members, while the ICT is seen as a powerful tool for economic development and for effective and efficient service delivery by government, Our country is still challenged with issues of accessibility, usability, and affordability. The inability to access ICT is closely associated with poverty, which is most prevalent in our rural and poor areas of our country. Since the pronouncement of South African Connect project in 2013, the ANC government has been hard at work to ensure that all South Africans have access to reliable ICT infrastructure. To date, 970 government facilities have been connected, and as a feasibility study has been conducted to evaluate the resources that will be needed to carry out phase 2, which will see the completion of the remaining 5,185 facilities that were not provided with broadband services due to the limited budget allocation. ANC implores on National Treasury to make provision for 2 of South Africa's Connect project as ministry and department also source out funding to ensure that the rest of the country gets connected. We also implore the National Treasury and the department to fast track the upgrade and rollout of 100 Mbps connectivity, as this will optimize the modernization and digitalization and transformation programs for government. There's been a rapid increase in the number of users utilizing online services for applications such as remote working, online learning, electronic healthcare, and a subsequent requirement for increased internet connectivity. The improvement in internet connectivity speeds has become a necessity, and therefore the requirement to expand South African Connect infrastructure footprint countrywide, and is of paramount importance. The ANC commends CETA for the hard work that they have put towards turning around the agency. Over the period ahead, the agency will focus on the financial sustainability and has reconfigured its strategic programs to complement the objectives of the National Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The ANC welcomes the allocation of 1.5 billion towards the acquisition of assets over the MTF period. The agency generates revenue by providing ICT infrastructure and services to government departments and organs of state. Revenue is expected to increase at an average rate of 4.3% from 6.2 billion in 2021-22 financial year to 7.1 billion in 2024-25. This will contribute towards aiding the work of the agency. Honorable members, it is in this 6th parliament that ICASA released long-awaited spectrum in over 17 years. The ANC commenced the work of the council through the auction of 14.4 billion that has been collected and will contribute towards the national fiscus. Not only will the funds benefit other key government programs that are focused on addressing the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality that confront our people on a daily basis. It will also provide better quality services for consumers with fewer dropped calls, faster internet download speeds, and reduced mobile data. The ANC notes in order to increase the access to quality broadband services, the authority plans to implement the radio frequency migration plan and develop monitoring report on the impact of deployment of 5G in the ICT sector. We are of the view that additional allocation of 300 million in 2022-23 will assist the Council in its effort to strengthen regulatory capacity and licensing of spectrum for international mobile telecommunication, specifically wireless broadband services. For the mobile operators, spectrum allocation will help provide faster and more widespread high-speed data service. It's expected to feed up spectrum, will increase access to internet and stimulate the growth of business and the economic recovery effort. With that presentation, the ANC support this budget. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Malala. I now recognize Cope.
Thank you, Honorable Chair and members. COPE has once again looked into the mandate of the department, today's budget proposals to the House, and the department's expenditure analysis. We have also assessed the challenges faced by the South Africans, particularly the underprivileged and the poor. COPE agrees that there are both national and international ICT demands that we can't avoid. We agree that, like other countries of the world, South Africa is faced with the 4th industrial revolution. And to save all South African people, Parliament must allot more and enough resources. It is not only the relevant machinery that is necessary to take South Africa and her people forward, but also the human brains that must be accessed to help with the implementation of the required knowledge. This means that enough must have been availed to ensure that enough educators and trainers are employed. On SABC, we know that SABC is faced with many challenges, which include those that have arisen due to technological advances, other forms and or media houses which have enough resources. If you were to compare them to SABC, the growing lack of interest from many companies when it comes to advertisements, corruption as already identified by the Auditor General's Office, and many other problems that need a capable management and an independent board. A board which is not pushed for the realization of particular political interests by certain political leaders. We truly need to look into that which SABC has and has been continuing to do, which is basically out of order. On the South African Post Office, that is an extremely important entity, which is, as you all know, used by millions of South Africans deep in the rural areas, in villages, and in townships. More must be done to improve their services by both ensuring enough staff and resources. Now, on all the other entities, I had no time to mention, I believe more must be done to address incapacity by many amongst them. South Africans pay those entities for nothing. The majority of them are given money every year, but either fail to do what they are supposed to do or misuse the money given to them by the South African people. The committee must address those problems as a matter of urgency. Let me end by saying that it is as a consequence.
That's where we're ending. Your time has expired. Thank you, Honorable Madisa. I now recognize Al Jama.
Thank you very much.
We support the vote.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Honorable House Chair, rural villages are always lagging with every advancement achieved, be it water, employment, health services, and lately communications and digital technology. Deputy Minister acknowledged that the first resistance fighters against apartheid and for our freedom came from former Transkei. And he even mentioned Walter Sisulu. So the first resistance fighters came from Transkei that led to our liberation, but they're the last to receive, in this case, digital skills. Honorable House Chair, we're not going to make any progress if the Deputy Minister says there are no shortcuts. There has to be shortcuts to make up for the long delays that we have experienced. Villages, they need data. President Ramaphosa talks about the right to data, not access to data, the right to data. And so let us hear that 1 gig of data will be given, especially to the people in the rural villages. I want to speak about the CASA. There are many government programs that are not communicated to the people because this department has failed the nation. Constituency offices are based in the heart of communities and easily accessible. These constituency offices, described as bringing parliament to the people, should be used by government and ICASA to inform people, and that should be part of the license conditions when they issue licenses to community radio stations. So, Honorable House Chair, we heard this morning in a portfolio committee that when it came to fiber, Telkom and the other two, for 5 years oppressed those below them that wanted to enter the field. We are, as Al Jama, very worried that the same will now happen, that the spectrum has been allocated and they will undermine the small businesses, the micro businesses, the township businesses. And when you lay a complaint with the speaker like they did now, They give you millions in compensation. We don't want compensation for small businesses. We want empowerment. Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Hendricks. I now recognize Honorable Malatsi. Honorable Malatsi.
Thank you, House Chairperson. The efficiency of the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies and its multiple state-owned entities have been hit the hardest by the frequency of cabinet reshuffles and musical chairs at various boards. From the disastrous tenures of Nombula Mukonyane and Siyabonga Twele to the prima donna days of Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrams, the department and its entities were the biggest victims of political interference and abuse of state resources, which almost collapsed them. The department's budget for the MTEF period stands at 7.7 billion, with 5.4 billion dedicated to transfers to entities under its portfolio. Given the scale of the lofty ambitions that the department and its respective entities have, there is a glaring mismatch between the budget and set targets. This makes it even more pressing for the department to spend wisely, to align its plans to the economic reality that it faces, and for the political principles to lead by example in upholding the highest level of financial probity. Yet the amount of money spent by the ministry on items such as travel, catering, and accommodation are an exhibition of disregard for any financial prudence. This ministry ranks amongst one of the biggest spenders in the cabinet on travel, catering, and accommodation. The total amount spent by the offices of the minister and the deputy minister between May 2019 and March 2022 is almost $250,000 on catering. And deputy minister, it is not sensationalized reporting. These are figures that are contained in a reply to parliamentary question 846, which the department replied to. While officials in the department spent almost double that amount by squandering approximately $500,000 on catering for the same period under review. This excessive wastage of public funds is even more worrying when one reviews both the ministry and department's expenditure on accommodation for the same period. The minister's accommodation expenditure amounted to 3.6 million, while the deputy minister's expenses stood at just over 1 million rands. In comparison, accommodation expenses for officials in the department in the same period were 10.7 million. These exorbitant amounts are difficult to justify, given that a large portion of them were incurred during the COVID pandemic when most of the country was working from home. We understand that the work of the executive often requires spending a number of days away from the official residence. However, political principles must be mindful that state resources are not a ticket to endless junkets. At a time when the National Treasury has been preaching the urgency of the gospel of upholding austerity measures in government, and when everyone in society is tightening their belts to adjust to the ever-rising cost of living, there is no justification whatsoever for any minister to be incurring millions on catering and accommodation. Honorable Minister, please liaise with your social development counterparts to reverse the senseless decision by the South African Post Office to no longer pay the 350 social relief of distress grant at its branches. If you claim to have so much unbridled confidence in the turnaround strategy of the South African Post Office, then lead the charge in reinstating the payment of these grants immediately. The insistence by the Post Office that its decision to stop paying these social relief grants at its branches will alleviate the existing long queues is just amateurish spin to gaslight poor South Africans as the primary source of the entity's gross inefficiency. The long queues at the post office are the legacy of chronic inefficiency, a shortage of staff, closure of more post offices, and obsolete technological infrastructure, and not because of the beneficiaries of the social relief grants. The hard truth is that the post office was broken by this ANC government. And today we are asked to entertain some fable about a turnaround strategy that will reposition the post office as a modern and profitable postal and courier services. From having one of the widest footprints of service delivery in the country, with fully functional branches in some of the most remote rural areas, the post office branches are now evaporating daily. A total of 248 post office branches were closed between January 2018 and March 2022, further pushing poor South Africans into faraway branches outside communities to access their grants. The post office has become one of the easiest targets of corruption cartels operating in our country. Since May 2020, when the post office started paying the social relief grant, a total of 1,100 burglaries, 631 armed robberies, and 103 cases of vandalism occurred at post office branches throughout the country. While there is no doubt a sizable number of honest and hardworking individuals working to serve the public good at the post office, far too many of its employees are colluding with criminals to loot it to the ground. Few things illustrate this as vividly as the high number of disciplinary cases against post office staff, ranging from theft of grant money to fraud. A total of 314 post office employees have been suspended with pay at a cost of 41 million rand in salaries since the 2020-21 financial year. House Chairperson, one of the largest contributors of widespread corruption in the public service is that the ANC, as a major beneficiary of state corruption, enables the theft and misuse of public funds with its nonchalant attitude towards its political leaders implicated in corruption. The SABC's strategic importance in society has previously been hampered by squabbles between the board members, infighting by senior executives, and tensions between the minister and the board. While the current SABC board and management are arguably making relative operational progress in repositioning the public broadcaster, the handling of the suspension and ultimate dismissal of the former head of news, Patiswa Magobeni, will remain an indelible stain that will forever taint their term of office. We have one message to the SABC. Please pursue and protect your journalistic independence at all times. The public broadcaster must resist all the undue pressure from the executive to reduce it into becoming a glorified communications agency for the government. We are all aware that this administration has an insatiable appetite to exert its unholy grip on how the media reports on its service delivery failures. We congratulate the incoming head of news, Mr. Musheshe Monare, for his appointment and hope that he will uphold the journalistic values that will enhance the SABC as the public broadcaster that we can all be proud of. The fair and consistent coverage of political parties must not just be an exception during elections. It must be a consistent norm throughout, whether there are elections or not. Honorable Minister, in your speech during the debate on the State of Nation address on February 2022, you exuberantly announced that an allocation of 10 gig basic data would be made available to every household. Yet in a reply to Parliamentary Question 431, you confessed without any sense of irony that a specific feasibility study relating to the 10 gig data program has not yet been undertaken. And perhaps this perfectly illustrates the irony of this government. Huge on overpromising and very low on delivering. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Malatsi. I was still listening, having given you more time, but thank you. I now recognize the African National Congress, Honorable Gumbo, with an added minute which was saved by Honorable Mulala. You now have 13 minutes.
Thank you, House Chair, honorable members and Deputy Minister, Minister, fellow South Africans. The African National Congress has as far back as 1969 at the Consultative Conference held in the city of Morogoro in Tanzania, affirmed that South Africa would have a mixed economy. A mixed economy comprises a balance between private sector and public sector ownership of the productive sectors of the economy.
In this regard, the developmental agenda of the ANC government must be enhanced through SOEs in order to ensure dedicated focused capacity of the state to deliver effectively and efficiently. The ANC believes that SOEs must be channeled towards the implementation of the objectives of the democratic state. In his 2022 State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa implored upon all of us to work together to address the challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality that plague our society today. One of the ways we ought to do that is by restoring trust and pride in our public institutions and develop them to be self-sustainable as they execute their respective key roles in the state. Government plays a critical role as a shareholder and executive authority. The ANC government is always concerned with the agenda of SOEs, their mandate and functionality. The challenge of weak leadership in both executive and non-executive board members in the past was persistent and undermined the critical roles of SOEs. Coupled with this, allegations of corruption, the SOEs have posed a challenge. All these challenges have been dealt with and are in the process of being resolved. The challenge of weak leadership. Some political parties here in this House would like to give an impression that nothing has been done by the ANC government with regard to resolving the challenges faced by our SOEs. Today, I will tell you a story of how our government has worked hard to improve the governance of SOEs and turn them around so that they fulfill their development mandate. I want to remind South Africans that it was the ANC members working with members of other parties who led the parliamentary inquiry into SABC, ESCOM, and PRASA, to mention a few, and we have also supported the work of the Zondo Commission, SIU, and various forensic investigations. It is essential that corruption be uprooted in all our SOEs. The legislatures in their oversight must pay attention to Auditor General's report on corruption and make necessary follow-ups. Government has embarked on a thorough assessment of the entities under this portfolio. To this effect, BBI and Centec have been merged. CETA, SABC, SAPO, and FPB are in the process of being repositioned and repurposed. This is to ensure that their mandates are in alignment with the developmental objectives of the state for enhanced service delivery to our people. The budget as a policy implementation tool plays a critical role towards this realization. While the SABC has raised its concerns in relation to the risk posed by the unfunded public mandate on its financial sustainability and the concerns around the declining audiences, the ANC commends the public broadcaster for achieving 96% of its turnaround strategy targets, and we also welcome the initiative that the broadcaster will be taking as a means to explore other revenue opportunities through the introduction of its own streaming and satellite services and seek to increase revenue generated from advertising. We believe that members of parliament, as well as the executive and the department, have an important role to play in ensuring that cooperation becomes self-sustainable. The corporation becomes self-sustainable. We look forward to seeing increased revenue from sponsorship, advertising, TV licenses, and new OTT platform. The ANC welcomes the move of the SABC to launch its own OTT platform, which is expected in the second quarter of the financial year 2022-2023. Revenue from the OTT platform is expected to amount to 88 million for the 2023-2024 financial year. OTT will total 471 million over the MTEF period. Honorable members, this is something to look forward to. South Africa's Broadcasting Digital Migration Project is long overdue. In 2006, South Africa and other countries in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa committed to meeting an International Telecommunication Union deadline to switch over to switch off to digital territorial television broadcasting by 2015. It is imperative that we support the work of the department to achieve complete analog switch off. This is important because it will release high demand spectrum which can be used towards the socio-economic development of our country as well as bridge the digital divide that exists. The ANC therefore support the once-off allocation of 1.1 billion to achieve this objective. Honorable members, it is indisputable that South African Post Office plays a vital role in the lives of many South Africans. Not only do we rely on it for our mail and postal services, but a vast majority of our people are dependent on it to receive their social grants. The post office has a footprint of 1,979 points across the country. The ANC supports the implementation of the Postal Office of Tomorrow strategy for the realization of renewed, modern, and sustainable post office that is technology-driven and has support of strategy partnerships in order to address the core challenges it faces. Over the medium term, the South African Post Office has been allocated 1.6 billion towards funding its public service mandate. While we welcome this allocation, we are also alive to the reality that SAPO is currently in a financial crisis. We call on the National Treasury to seek innovative solutions to support our post office. Equally, we would also like to call upon all South Africans to take pride and protect their public infrastructure. The vandalism and robberies taking place in some of our post office branches undermines and is a direct insult to our democratic gains. Honorable members, while we believe that Post Office of Tomorrow strategy provides a glimmer of hope to turn the tide, we also understand the fact that in its current form, the post office was unable to adequately service the millions of SRD or 350 beneficiaries. The ANC supports that other means of disbursement being made available to ease the delivery of 350 grants on the post office, and we are of the view that the proposed solution will be beneficial to everyone as it provides more options for our people to receive their money from either Pick a Pay, Boxer, ShopRite, Checkers, or USAFE. We further support that the South African Post Office commits to continue to dispense the old age, disability, and child grants. In its 54th National Conference, the ANC resolved that a state bank shall be established in order to promote economic development. The ANC also resolved that the Post Bank should be registered as a bank, with the understanding that state banks tend to give greater emphasis on employment creation, empowerment, industrial diversification and development, small business and cooperatives, small-scale agriculture, micro-enterprises, and local and regional economic development. This would all be geared to the betterment of the lives of our people. The African National Congress welcomes that the banking license for the post office is in its final stages and now pending the finalization of the amendments to the Post Bank Act. The ultimate passing of the Post Bank Amendment Act will enable the registration of the banking controlling company with the South African Reserve Bank, and this is the final stage in the banking license application process. The ANC supports Budget 30 Communications. Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Gombo. We now proceed, and I recognize the Honorable Minister, and as I go to her, she has been upgraded with a minute. You're now at level 6, Honorable Minister, with your seat.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. And maybe let me start with the honorable members of the DA. Indeed, listening for understanding is not common to all of us. And I am thankful that the committee is chaired by the ANC, who understand the legal principle of sub judice on matters that deal with the court. And I know that majority or cowards hide behind the general because the facts will not support their hallucinations. We'll await for some members to remove their heads from the clouds and come back to Mother Earth and deal with the realities of our time. Honorable Singh, we continue to work on our performance management system and consequence management system. You'll start to see improvements on that, not only in the department, but across the entities. And we want to thank honorable members, except the EFF, for supporting resoundingly the conclusion of the digital migration program. That must be concluded with no further delay. And I hope those that have the powers to adjudicate on the matters will also be listening. And indeed, Honorable Mulala and Honorable Maneli, we need to build capacity within the state and SETA to introduce new technologies and emerging technologies. I'm glad to report that last year, South Africa spearheaded the Artificial Intelligence Blueprint for Africa through the Smart Africa Alliance with the contribution of academia, research institutions, and leading players. This financial year, we'll launch the SA Artificial Intelligence Hub in partnerships with academic institutions and industry players. It is my honor to announce that the catalytic projects of the SA Artificial Intelligence Hub will include some of the applications that are registered in the DigTech platform that I spoke to earlier. This work is part of the department's implementation of the recommendations of the Presidential Commission on 4IR. And Honorable Gumbu, we are glad that you raised the matter of the Post Bank. The success of the Post Bank is to an extent dependent on the viability of SAPO. The Deputy Minister detailed the work we are undertaking to implement the strategy for the Post Office of tomorrow and the small achievements we are starting to register, although the road ahead remains challenging. Access to funding is a major contributor to participation in economic activities. During the COVID-19 pandemic, South Africans witnessed the reluctance of the commercial banks to assist the poor and the marginalized, both businesses and individuals, to financially recover despite government guarantees. In addition, banks including South Africa have played a catalytic role in the adoption of technology. The Post Bank, as a state bank, can therefore play a significant role to drive adoption of technology, but also to extend banking services in the terms that promote inclusion and banking for all South Africans. We are working in a determined manner to ensure that the corporatization of the Post Bank is concluded within the current financial year. However, to achieve this, we will require the assistance of Parliament to prioritize the finalization of the Post Bank Amendment Bill that is already submitted for consideration. In addition, we are working with the relevant authorities to complete the appointment of the full complement of the Post Bank Board in line with applicable rules. We will also complete the strategy and implementation plan for the Post Bank as a state bank. We are aware of the challenges of system weaknesses facing the Post Bank, and we are working with the board to resolve them, including holding those liable accountable. We must appreciate the support of the Minister of Finance on the work we are doing to ensure successful corporatization of the Post Bank. As I conclude, House Chair, the work we do is not for us. It is an investment for future generations. Therefore, we cannot aim low, no matter how daunting the tasks and how big the obstacles. The tasks at hand and those that lie ahead demands that we remain resolute, focused, and intentional. We have the caliber of people in both in the department, our entities, and sector to emerge victorious on the other side. In any case, we are raised to know that munchimbiza busiku undi mutenda launcher, muntsipiza busiu kimuleboga busile, munafamba kana yena busiku we will act our part well. Ndoribo.
Enkosi Mphathiswa ngalo mazwi. Honorable members, that concludes the debate on this mini virtual plenary. The mini plenary rises. Siyabulela. Thank you.